The air in the Galactic Concordance docking bay was very clean and smelled of sharp chemicals. It was a smell meant to impress visitors and maybe to make them a little bit afraid. For Guard Sumin, it was just a normal smell. She was a Tarkellan, a species much bigger and stronger than most. She had thick green scales and 4 dark eyes that missed nothing. Her job was security. Today, she was assigned to Bay Epsilon 7. A new ship was arriving. The ship was from a species that had only recently joined the wider galaxy. They were called humans. Sumin looked at the human ship. It was blocky and plain, not smooth and beautiful like the ships of the older spacefaring races. It looked like a simple metal box meant for work, not for show. According to her screen, there was only one person on board. His name was June. He was a diplomat. The ship's door opened with a hiss. Out stepped the human, June. Sumin looked him over. He was not impressive. He was of average height. He had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor like her scales. His skin looked soft. He walked on 2 legs, which was normal, but he seemed fragile. He carried a single bag over his shoulder. He saw her and walked over. His face showed a calm expression. He did not seem nervous. "State your name and business," Sumin said. Her voice was a low hum like a large engine idling. "My name is June. I am the human diplomatic liaison. I am here for the trade talks," he said. His voice was calm and clear. Sumin nodded once. This was the standard procedure. "You are now in a secure zone of the Galactic Concordance. For the safety of all, you must yield your weapons. You will give all weapons to security for the length of your stay. This rule is non-negotiable." June gave a small smile. It seemed polite. "Of course. I understand. Standard procedure." He shifted his bag on his shoulder. "Where would you like me to put them?" Sumin pointed a thick finger towards a large flat table next to her. It was made of a strong clear material and had a scanner built into it. "Place all items on the scanning table. Start with the obvious." "Okay," June said. He seemed very willing to cooperate. He started with the easy things. He took his bag off his shoulder and placed it on the table. Then he reached into the pockets of his trousers. From one pocket, he pulled out a small, flat rectangle. "This is my personal data pad," he explained, setting it down. From another pocket, he produced a communication device. "My comms unit." He placed it next to the data pad. He then pulled out a small folded leather object. "My wallet. It holds my identification and currency." He set it down. Sumin watched, her 4 eyes blinking slowly. This was normal. This was what she expected from a new, simple species. A few basic gadgets. It was almost done, but then June did not stop. He unbuttoned the cuff of his left sleeve. Sumin thought it was a nervous habit, but it was not. He revealed a hidden pocket sewn into the inside of the sleeve. From it, he pulled out a small metal tool with many fold-out parts. "A multi-tool," June said. "It has a small knife, a file, screwdrivers. Very useful." He placed it on the growing pile. Sumin's main pair of eyes narrowed slightly. A hidden pocket? That was not standard for a diplomat. Before she could speak, June reached into the same hidden sleeve pocket and pulled out 2 more items. One was a small spool of very thin, shiny wire. The other was a flat packet with tablets inside, and this is monofilament wire, very strong, and these are water purification tablets. They make dirty water safe to drink. Sumin's low hum gained a slight edge. "Explain. Why does a diplomat carry hidden tools and wire?" June looked at her, his expression still calm. "It is survival gear. My people believe in being prepared for many situations." He then moved to the collar of his shirt. It looked like a normal collar, but he pinched a small decorative pin on it. He pulled, and the pin came away, unfolding into a set of tiny, delicate metal picks. "A lockpick set," he said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Sometimes doors get stuck." Sumin was now fully alert. Her training told her that hidden items were a red flag. This was no longer a simple procedure. She watched him more closely. June then bent down and touched the cuff of his right trousers. There was a seam that looked like all the others, but he pressed it in a specific way and a small hidden flap opened. From it, he pulled out something that made Sumin tense. It was a tiny cylinder, no bigger than the tip of his finger. It was dark green. "And this?" she asked, her voice dropping to a warning tone. "This is a micro-concussion grenade," June said. He placed it very carefully on the table. "It is a non-lethal crowd control device. It makes a very loud sound and a bright light to disorient a threat." That is a weapon, Sumin stated firmly. Technically, it is a deterrent, June replied, his voice still polite. It is designed to avoid causing permanent harm. Sumin let out a slow breath. This human was full of surprises, and she did not like surprises. She decided to let him continue. She wanted to see how far this would go. June moved to his vest. It was a sturdy, practical garment with many pockets on the outside. He had already emptied the obvious ones. Now he started on the ones that were harder to see. From a pocket behind a flap, he pulled out a heavy metal flashlight. This is a high-lumen flashlight. It can produce a beam of light bright enough to temporarily blind someone if shined in their eyes. He set it down. Next was a metal rod with a rough striker, a fire-starting rod, for creating a spark to light a fire. Then a small mirror, a signal mirror, for communicating over long distances using flashes of light. Sumin just watched. The pile on the table was getting bigger. It was a strange collection of items. Some seemed harmless. Others were clearly tools that could be used to hurt someone. June moved to his trousers again. He ran his fingers along the inside seam. He found another hidden spot and pulled out a flat, dark gray blade. It was not metal. It felt like a hard ceramic, a ceramic knife. It does not set off metal detectors, he explained. Then he took off his belt. It looked like a normal leather belt, but he pressed a hidden clasp and a section of the belt came apart. Inside was a thin, strong wire, a garrote wire. It is used for cutting. He also had a small pressurized canister. It had a picture of a red pepper on it. This is pepper spray. It causes a burning sensation in the eyes and throat of an attacker. It is very effective. The table was no longer neat. It was covered with a strange and dangerous collection of gadgets and tools. Other beings in the docking bay were starting to notice. A tall, slender diplomat from another species paused to stare. A low murmur began. Sumin felt a flush of heat under her scales. This was becoming an embarrassment. This one soft-looking human was taking apart the efficient security process she was known for. He had not been hostile or rude. He was just emptying his pockets. And he seemed to have an endless number of pockets. A junior guard, a young Tarkellan, came over to see if she needed help. Sumin gestured to the table. Start a count, she ordered, her voice tight. List every item he yields. The junior guard nodded and began to look over the pile using his datapad to make a list. June seemed not to notice the attention. He was now taking off his left boot. He placed it on the table. Then he pointed to the heel. There is a compartment here. He pressed a hidden button and a small section of the heel slid open. Inside was a thin, sharp piece of hardened plastic. A shiv, for emergencies. He then picked up a writing utensil from the pile. It was a pen he had placed there earlier. He twisted it and a tiny, glowing needle emerged from the tip. This is a plasma needle. It can burn through weak locks or be used as a last resort weapon. He pointed to some of the food items he had placed on the table. These nutritional paste packets are safe to eat. But this vial, he said, pointing to a small glass container of clear liquid, is an industrial solvent. It can melt through certain types of plastic and metal. The junior guard looked up from his datapad, his eyes wide. Guard Sumin, he said, his voice unsure. The count. We are at 47 separate items. Sumin stared at the mountain of gear on the table. June stood there in his socks, having removed his jacket, belt, and one boot. He looked completely harmless. But he had produced a small arsenal. It was a collection that could equip a small team of soldiers. She looked at the human. This diplomat named June. He simply looked back at her, his face still calm. He did not seem proud or defiant. He just seemed prepared. Sumin realized that this was not over. The human had emptied 47 pockets, and he was not finished. The number hung in the air between them. 47. The junior guard's voice had trembled as he said it. Sumin could feel the eyes of the entire docking bay on her. The low murmur of other diplomats and station workers had grown into a quiet, attentive silence. All attention was fixed on the human and the mountain of his possessions. June stood patiently, waiting for her next instruction. He was now in his socks, having given up his jacket, belt, and one boot. He looked smaller, more vulnerable, and yet the table told a different story. It was a chaotic display of potential violence. The ceramic knife lay next to the packet of water tablets. The micro-grenade sat beside the signal mirror. It was a puzzle that made no sense to Sumin. Why would one being need all of this? 47, Su-min repeated, her voice a low, dangerous rumble. She gestured at the pile with one thick, scaly hand. You come for trade talks. You are a diplomat. Explain this. Explain why you need a garrote wire for diplomacy. June met her gaze. His eyes were still calm. It is not for diplomacy, he said simply. It is for the moments between diplomacy, the walk from the ship to the meeting, the journey through an unknown station. My species comes from a world that was unpredictable. We learned to be ready for anything. This is just being ready to kill, Su-min stated. It was not a question. Ready to survive, June corrected softly. There is a difference. Su-min was not convinced. Her training screamed that this being was a massive security risk. But he had followed every instruction. He had not resisted. He was on the surface perfectly compliant. The problem was the sheer volume of his compliance. Continue, she commanded, her voice tight. She needed to see the full extent of this. She needed to understand what she was dealing with. June gave a small nod. He picked up his other boot, the one he was still wearing. He sat down on a nearby seating ledge to take it off. This simple, casual act felt strangely out of place in the tense atmosphere. He placed the boot on the table. The sole, he said, pointing to the bottom. It has a hidden layer. He pressed a small, almost invisible button near the heel. A section of the thick sole popped open. Inside, nestled in a custom-shaped slot, was a flat, square device with a single button. This is a localized EMP emitter. One-time use. It will disable all unshielded electronics within a 5-meter radius for approximately 10 seconds. The junior guard gasped and took a step back. Su-min felt a cold dread in her stomach. An electromagnetic pulse device. That was not a tool for personal survival. That was a tool for sabotage, for creating a window of chaos. That is a weapon of war, Su-min said, her voice barely above a whisper. It is a tool for creating an opportunity to escape, June replied. He looked from the device to her. If I am trapped by automated security doors or armed drones, this gives me a chance. It is a last resort. He said it with the same tone someone might use to describe a spare battery. Su-min realized that to this human, there was no moral weight to the object itself. It was just a solution to a potential problem. June then picked up his bag, the one he had placed on the table first. He had already emptied its main compartment. Now he unzipped a hidden panel on the back, the side that would rest against his body. From it he pulled out a thin, flexible sheet of material. It looked like a large piece of thick cloth. This is a thermal blanket, he said. It reflects body heat to prevent hypothermia. Then he flipped it over. The other side was a dull matte gray. This side is designed to scatter most security scanner waves. It makes the things wrapped in it very hard to detect. He laid the blanket on the table. Next, from the hidden compartment came a small, hard plastic case. He opened it. Inside were several vials of clear liquid and a small, sterile injector. This is a medical kit, he explained. Stimulants, coagulants to stop bleeding, a universal antibiotic, and a powerful neuroinhibitor. He pointed to the last vial. A neuro what? The junior guard asked, his datapad shaking in his hand. A poison, Su-min translated, her voice grim. Why carry poison? In case of capture by a hostile species with unknown biology, June said. It is a fast and painless way to avoid interrogation. He said it with no emotion, as if reading from a manual. The items kept coming. From the seams of his discarded jacket, he found more hidden pockets. He pulled out a small grappling hook with a thin, incredibly strong cord. For climbing, he said. He pulled out a set of metal picks that were different from the first set. For more complex locks. He produced a small device that emitted a constant, low-frequency sound. This disrupts the hearing of many canine-like species used for tracking. With each new item, the story became clearer. This was not just a collection of weapons. This was a survival kit for every possible disaster. Escape, evasion, medicine, shelter, sabotage. It was all there. The pile was now so large that some items were falling off the edges of the table. The junior guard's count was well past 60. The watching crowd was no longer whispering. They were silent, watching the strange ritual with a kind of horrified fascination. Su-min felt a deep frustration building inside her. This was a waste of time. This human was playing games. He was trying to embarrass her, to make a mockery of her security checkpoint. Enough, she finally barked, her voice echoing in the quiet bay. This is a deliberate provocation. You are hiding these things to test our security, to show us that you can. June stopped. He was holding a small packet of seeds he had pulled from a pocket in his trousers. He looked at her, and for the first time his calm expression shifted. He looked confused. Test you? He asked. No, this is just what I carry. No one needs this many things, Suman said, gesturing at the overflowing table. It is irrational. It is paranoid. June looked at the table, then back at her. He seemed to be searching for the right words. On my world, he began slowly, for most of our history we were not the strongest species. We were not the fastest. We had no claws, no sharp teeth. Our home planet has earthquakes, storms, volcanoes, and predators that could easily kill us. The only thing that kept us alive was our ability to think ahead, to imagine the worst thing that could happen and then to pack for it. He pointed at the pile. This is not paranoia. This is the result of millions of years of evolution on a world that tried to kill our ancestors every single day. We are not a hardy species. We are a prepared species. There is a difference. He looked at the packet of seeds in his hand. These, for example. They are fast-growing, nutritious plants. If I were stranded somewhere without food, I could grow these. It is a simple solution to a simple problem. Sumin stared at him. She heard his words, but she was struggling to understand the mindset. To live in a state of constant preparation for catastrophe. It was exhausting just to think about. Just then, a new voice cut through the tension. It was calm, authoritative, and familiar. Sumin, report, she turned. Captain Day was walking towards them. He was an older Tarkellan. His scales faded and scarred from a long career. His four eyes took in the scene instantly. The massive pile of gear, the stunned junior guard, the watching crowd, and the human standing calmly in his socks. Sumin straightened her posture. Captain, the human diplomat, June, he is yielding his possessions. We are at over 60 items. Captain Day's eyes moved slowly over the table. He saw the grenade, the EMP device, the poison, the garrote wire. His face was unreadable. He then looked at June. Diplomat June, Captain Day said, his tone neutral. Is there a problem? June gave a small, respectful bow of his head. No problem, Captain. I am simply following Guard Sumin's instructions to yield my weapons. Captain Day pointed to the packet of seeds still in June's hand. Is that a weapon? It can be, June said. If you are starving, it is a weapon against hunger. If you need to distract a herbivorous creature, it is bait. A tool is defined by its use. Captain Day was silent for a long moment. He looked from the seeds to the EMP device. He saw the logic, a terrifying and alien logic that connected them. It was not the logic of a warrior who loved weapons. It was the logic of a survivor who saw everything in the universe as a potential tool or a potential threat. He turned back to Su Min. His voice was quiet, meant only for her. Stand by, guard, let him continue. Su Min was shocked. Captain? He has an EMP device. He has poison. I see what he has, Captain Day replied calmly. Now I want to see what he is. He looked back at June. Please, continue. Captain Day's order hung in the air. Sumin could not believe it. Let him continue? The human had already produced enough equipment to start a small war, and her captain wanted to see more. She felt a hot flush of embarrassment and anger under her scales. This was her checkpoint, her responsibility, and this soft-skinned creature was making a joke of it. But she was a professional. She gave a sharp, stiff nod. As you command, Captain. She turned back to June, her four eyes hard. Proceed. June looked from the captain to Sumin. He seemed to understand the tension. He gave another small, polite nod and continued his work. He was methodical, like a machine performing a task. He placed the packet of seeds on the table. Then he reached for the collar of his shirt, the one he was still wearing. It was a simple, sturdy piece of clothing. He pinched the fabric at the back of his neck and pulled. There was a quiet ripping sound. A hidden seam came apart. From inside the collar, he pulled out a thin, flexible strip of metal. This is a handcuff shim, he explained. It can be used to slip out of most standard restraints. He laid it on the table. Next, he rolled up the sleeve of his right arm. High up on his bicep, there was a tight elastic band. Tucked under it was a small, flat plastic case. He opened it. Inside were two small pills, one white, one blue. The white one is a concentrated stimulant. It can keep you awake and alert for up to 72 hours. The blue one is a sedative. It is strong enough to put most large land animals to sleep in seconds. More poison? Suman asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Medicine and poison are often the same chemical, June replied, his tone still educational. The difference is the dose and the intent. He placed the case carefully next to the seeds. He then began to work on his trousers. He had already removed his belt, but now he showed her the belt loops. One of them was not a loop at all. It was a solid piece of plastic that snapped open. Inside was a coiled-up thin piece of wire with a small weight on each end. Bolus, he said, for tripping a pursuer or catching small game. He moved to his socks. They looked like normal socks, but he pressed his thumb against a specific spot on the heel of his right sock. A small section of the fabric, which was actually a cleverly disguised patch, peeled back. Underneath was a single razor-sharp blade no bigger than a fingernail. A hideaway blade, he said, for when you have lost everything else. The junior guard, whose datapad was now struggling to keep up, whispered, 89 items. Guard Sumin. The number was meaningless now. It was just a count of how long this humiliation would last. The crowd was still watching, but their shock had turned into a kind of weary curiosity. How much more could this human possibly have? June then picked up his datapad, one of the very first things he had placed on the table. He pressed a hidden latch on the side. The back panel of the datapad popped open. Inside, nestled next to the battery, was not more electronics but a set of tiny, precise tools. Micro-tools, June said, for working on very small electronics or mechanisms. He picked up his comms unit. He twisted the antenna in a way that was not normal. The top of the antenna came off, revealing a long, thin needle. Lockpick for tubular locks. He even had something in his hair. His hair was short and neat, but he ran his fingers through it and pulled out two small, stiff wires that had been tucked against his scalp. They were almost the same color as his hair. Improvised lockpicks. You can make them from many things. Sumin watched, her arms crossed. She was no longer angry. She was just tired. This was the most bizarre and thorough security check she had ever performed. The human was a walking storage unit. Every part of his clothing, every personal item had been modified to hold something hidden. Captain Day, however, was watching with intense interest. His old eyes were not on the individual items anymore. They were on June. He was studying the human's movements, his calm explanations, his entire being. Your people, Captain Day said, his voice cutting through the quiet. Do they all carry so much? June paused while retrieving a small magnet from a hidden pocket in his waistband. He thought for a moment. Not exactly like this, he said. But most humans have a version of it. A everyday carry, a pocket knife, a multi-tool, a flashlight. We feel uncomfortable without them. It is a habit from our history. To leave home without a tool feels like going out without your skin. Uncomfortable? Sumin could not stop herself. You have a weapon in your sock. That is more than discomfort. It is a matter of perspective, guard, June said. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw a flicker of something else in his eyes. Not anger, but a deep, weary understanding. Imagine if you were born without your scales. If your skin was soft and could be easily cut. If you had no natural claws to defend yourself, what would you do? Sumin did not have an answer. The idea was ridiculous. She was born with her scales. They were a part of her. You would make scales, June said, answering his own question. He gestured to the pile on the table. You would make claws. You would make fangs. You would carry them with you. Always, because the world would be full of things that had them naturally. That is what this is. These are our scales. These are our claws. We are not a species of warriors. We are a species of toolmakers. And the most important tool we ever made was the one that keeps all the other tools handy. He reached for the last thing. It was the bag he had carried off the ship. He had emptied all the hidden compartments. Now he simply turned the bag upside down and shook it. A few lint balls fell out. Then he showed her the inside. It was empty. That is all of it, June said. He stood up straight and spread his arms slightly, a universal gesture of having nothing left to hide. I have yielded all physical items I carried onto the station. The docking bay was utterly silent. The only sound was the distant hum of the station's life support systems. The mountain of gadgets, tools, and weapons on the table was a stunning sight. It was a monument to human ingenuity and paranoia. The junior guard finally spoke, his voice a hushed whisper. The final count is 112 separate items, Captain. Sumin looked at Captain Day. What would he do now? The human had followed the order to the letter. He had yielded a terrifying number of potentially dangerous objects. But he had also shown that, by his own definition, he had followed the rules. He was now physically unarmed. Captain Day took a step forward. He looked at the table, then at June. He studied the human for a long, long time. "Diplomat June," the captain said, his voice calm and even. "Are you finished?" June met the captain's gaze. His calm expression did not change, but something in the air shifted. The feeling of a simple, if strange, security check was gone. Now it felt like something more important was happening. June slowly lowered his arms. "No, sir," he said, his voice clear and firm. "I am not." The two words landed not like a sound, but like a physical blow. "I am not." A fresh wave of tension swept through the docking bay. Su-min felt her muscles tighten. What more could there be? The human was standing in his socks and basic clothes next to a mountain of his own gear. He had emptied every pocket, every seam, every hidden compartment. He had nothing left to give. Captain Day did not seem surprised. He simply tilted his head, his old scarred face showing a deep curiosity. "No?" he asked. "Explain." June did not reach for another pocket. He did not bend down to check another seam. Instead, he stood up even straighter. He let his hands fall to his sides, relaxed but ready. He took a slow, quiet breath, and then he changed. It was not a physical change. He did not grow taller or sprout claws. It was something else, something in the way he held himself. The mild, polite expression on his face faded away. It was like a mask being taken off. What was left was a cool, sharp calmness. His eyes, which had been patient and explanatory, now became focused and intense. They held a new light, a hard, calculating intelligence. The air around him seemed to grow colder. The casual feeling of the curious diplomat was gone. In its place was a sense of immense potential, like a weapon that had just been switched from safe to fire. "The most dangerous weapon a human carries," June said, his voice different now. It was lower, flatter, devoid of the friendly tone he had used before. "Is not in our pockets. It was never in my bag. It is the thing that designed all of this." He gestured with his chin towards the chaotic pile on the table. "It is the mind that looked at a simple piece of wire and saw a tool for building, a trap for hunting, and a weapon for killing. It is the mind that saw a poisonous plant and wondered, what small part of this could be used as medicine? It is the mind that can look at a peaceful situation and imagine 20 ways it could go wrong, and then invent 20 solutions for each of those problems." He took a single, slow step forward. Su-min instinctively shifted her weight, ready for a fight. But June was not moving towards her. He was just making a point. "I have yielded every physical object," June continued. His eyes locked on Captain Day. "I have given you 112 solutions to 112 different problems. But I cannot give you the problem solver. I cannot yield the weapon that created them." He tapped the side of his own head with one finger. "This is the weapon, the human mind. It is a tool for survival, and survival is a very messy, very violent business. We are peaceful because we choose to be. We are calm because we have planned for the chaos. But the capacity for violence, for creative and absolute violence, is always there. It is the foundation of our peace. It is the reason we can afford to be diplomats." Su-min finally understood. The table full of gadgets was not the threat. It was a symptom. It was the physical proof of the real threat, which was the thinking process that had created it. The human was not a walking arsenal. He was a walking factory for arsenals. He could probably look at the cleaning supplies in a storage closet and build a bomb. He could use a dinner fork as a deadly weapon. Captain Day was silent, his 4 eyes fixed on June. He was not looking at a diplomat anymore. He was looking at the product of a world that had forced a species to become endlessly adaptable, endlessly creative, and endlessly dangerous. "You carry this mindset as a weapon?" Captain Day asked. "I carry it as my nature," June corrected. "You asked me to yield my weapons. My body is a weapon. My mind is a weapon. My knowledge is a weapon. The stories of my ancestors are weapons. The lessons from our history are weapons. I am made of weapons. To yield them would be to cease to exist." He looked at the pile on the table, then back at the captain. "You can take my things. You can lock them away. And if you put me in an empty room with nothing, I will use the dust in the air and the cracks in the floor to cause trouble. I will use my own bones as tools if I have to, because that is what my species does. We see resources where others see nothing. We see opportunity in disaster." He finally turned his gaze to Su-min. She felt a chill. He was not looking at her with anger or challenge. He was looking at her with a kind of pity, as if he felt sorry for her because she could not understand what it was like to be so soft and so dangerous at the same time. "Guard Su-min," he said, his voice still quiet but firm. "You have my things, but you do not have me disarmed. You cannot have me disarmed. That is what I bring to the negotiation table. Not a hidden blade, but the fact that I am always armed. My willingness to talk is a choice. My peacefulness is a strategy. Remember that." The truth of his words settled over the docking bay. The other species in the galaxy had natural weapons or advanced technology. But this was different. The humans' weapon was their imagination, their relentless, problem-solving, threat-anticipating imagination. It was a weapon that could not be taken away. Captain Day let out a long, slow breath. He looked from June to the table and then to Su-min. He saw the understanding dawning on her face, mixed with fear and a new kind of respect. The captain took a step forward, closing the distance between himself and the human. He did not stand in a threatening way. He stood as one professional acknowledging another. "Diplomat June," Captain Day said. "The inspection is over." He then turned to Su-min. His voice was calm and final. "Stand down, guard. The inspection is over. Escort the diplomat to his quarters." He looked back at June, the unarmed human who had just proven he was the most armed being on the station. "The Galactic Concordance," Captain Day said, "is now in session." The silence in the docking bay was heavy and complete. Captain Day's words, "The inspection is over," seemed to hang in the air. For a moment, nobody moved. The crowd of onlookers, the junior guard, even Su-min were all frozen, trying to process what had just happened. The human, June, had not moved a muscle. He still stood in that new focused way. The calm but intense energy coming from him was like a physical force. He had not yielded a new object. He had yielded a concept, and that concept was more frightening than any of the 112 items on the table. Su-min felt a conflict inside her. Her training screamed that this being was an unacceptable risk. He had openly declared himself a weapon, but her captain had given an order, and a deeper, more instinctual part of her now understood that locking up his gadgets would not change the essential nature of the threat. The threat was the man himself. Captain Day's order finally broke through her thoughts. "Escort the diplomat to his quarters." Su-min took a slow breath. She forced her body to relax from its combat-ready stance. She was a professional. She would follow orders. She looked at June and gave a short, sharp nod. "This way, diplomat," she said, her voice huskier than usual. June's intense posture softened, just a little. The sharp light in his eyes faded, replaced by the calm, polite look he had when he first arrived. The weapon had been sheathed. He nodded back to her. Of course, he did not ask for his clothes back. He did not look at the mountain of his possessions on the table. He simply turned, still in his socks, and began to walk towards the exit she had indicated. Su-min fell into step beside him, her large frame making his seem even smaller. The crowd parted for them silently. The stares were no longer curious or amused. They were looks of awe, confusion, and fear. They had not just watched a security check. They had watched a demonstration of a new kind of power. As they walked down the gleaming corridor away from the bay, the silence between them was thick. Su-min's mind was racing. She thought about his words. "My willingness to talk is a choice. My peacefulness is a strategy." What did that mean for the trade talks? What did that mean for the future? She glanced at him. He walked calmly, his eyes taking in the details of the station, the layout of the corridors, the location of security panels, the types of locks on the doors. He was not doing it in a sneaky way. He was just observing the way any diplomat might. But now Su-min saw it differently. He was not just sightseeing. He was gathering data. He was updating his mental library of solutions and problems. "You are not what I expected," Su-min said finally, the words coming out before she could stop them. June looked at her. "What did you expect?" "I expected a soft species. A simple species. One that needed protection." She shook her head. "I was wrong. We are soft," June agreed. "Our skin cuts easily. Our bones break. A change in air pressure can kill us. A tiny virus can wipe out millions. We are aware of our fragility every day. That is why we are like this. Our weakness is the reason for our strength." They reached a bank of elevators. Su-min pressed the call button, Your things, she said. Your gear. What should we do with it? June considered the question. You can keep it in a secure locker, or you can give it back to me. It does not matter. It does not matter? Suman was surprised. You spent all that time collecting it, hiding it. They are just things, June said as the elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. They can be replaced. The knowledge of how to make them, how to use them, that is what is important. That is what you cannot lock away. The elevator began to move. Suman thought about the human's history, a world of disasters and predators. She imagined generations of soft, fragile creatures using their minds to fight back against a universe that wanted to crush them. They did not fight with claws but with cleverness. They did not survive with strength but with preparation. She began to understand. The human was not a threat because he wanted to fight. He was a threat because he was guaranteed to survive. He would always find a way. In a negotiation, that made him incredibly powerful. You could not threaten him. You could not corner him. He always had a plan and a backup plan and a plan for when the backup plan failed. They arrived at the diplomatic quarters. The door to his room was made of a strong, polished metal. Suman entered a code and it slid open with a quiet hiss. The room inside was comfortable, with a bed, a desk, and a window looking out at the stars. June walked in and turned to face her. Thank you for the escort, guard Sumin. Sumin stood in the doorway. She felt she had to say something. The events in the docking bay had changed something. It had changed her understanding of the galaxy. Your people, she said. Are they all like you? June gave a small, genuine smile. It was the first truly real smile she had seen from him. Some are artists. Some are farmers. Some are teachers. They carry different things in their pockets. But yes, in their own way, they all carry the same thing I do. The same mind. The same history. He looked out the window at the stars. We look up at the universe and we see beauty. But we also see a cold, empty, and dangerous place. So we pack a bag. It is just what we do. Suman nodded slowly. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with a profound respect. She had thought humans were primitive. Now she saw that they had mastered the most important skill of all, the skill of lasting. The trade talks begin in 1 hour, she said, her voice formal again but without the earlier hostility. I will be ready, June said. Suman turned to leave. As the door began to slide shut, she took one last look at the human diplomat. He was standing in the middle of the room, a soft-looking man in simple clothes with no possessions, no tools, no weapons, and she knew without a doubt that he was the most dangerous being on the entire station. The door closed with a solid thud. Down in the docking bay, workers were carefully cataloging and bagging the 112 items. They handled the microgrenade and the EMP device with extreme care. They were worried about these physical things, but Captain Day, who was watching them, was not looking at the objects. He was thinking about the human's final words. He was thinking about a species that saw everything as a tool or a threat. He was thinking about the upcoming talks. He knew that the other diplomats would come with data and demands. The human would come with that. And that was something nobody had prepared for. The galaxy had just become a much more interesting and much more unpredictable place.